Okay, so future VAC meetings. 1st of December, we've got Paul Money, Images of the Universe Part 2. And then the 15th of December, obviously, that's our last one for before Christmas. So have you got any ideas for doing stuff? Come on, folks. Again, I've moved on and nobody's come up with that much.
Well, there's a few scribbles in the pat on the scribble, isn't there?
Yeah, they're the ones I put on, I think, didn't I?
No.
Oh yeah, Roger, you put in a roundup of the year.
We got quiz or funnies and other
bits. Yeah. Nick said he's going to do some funnies for us, which are usually pretty good when he's done them at Northampton. Dusko's Underwater Observatory. He does a great talk on the construction of his observatory, and that is well worth listening to. I can tell you that. Somebody thought of a sing along as well. But what we sing along to remains to be seen, and then possible quiz. So, you know, these are all things that sort of need somebody's input. So if anybody can volunteer, that'd be great.
Some Christmas songs.
Not rushing forward.
I could sing.
This is like an AGM, isn't it? Where everybody starts looking at their shoes and...
I got a guitar and I can sing.
Hey. I've got a guitar. I can't sing and I can't really play guitar that well, but you know.
I've got guitar. I can't sing.
Having been paid previously to stop singing, I think I'm going to pass on this one.
Yeah, make more money not to sing than you do when you try to sing. Yeah. Okay, but you know, if anybody wants to throw themselves in to do something for that, that'd be great. That'll ease my load a little bit. Okay, so please come forward, somebody, please. Anyway, okay, so 5th of January is a scheduled meeting. We haven't got anything for that. So any ideas, anything we can put in for beginning of the year?
What's up in the night sky?
Oh, okay. Well, let me just put this in. I should have prepared this.
How about all of us putting a little bit of an input on talking about our own little astronomy clubs, perhaps?
Well, that'd be good, yeah. Or what your journey, your astronomy journey.
Yeah.
And your clubs, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That
sounds good.
Because everybody can put in sort of 5 minutes worth, and it'd be quite interesting to hear from everybody, I suppose.
Yeah. Good idea.
I'll do a 10-minute presentation on an astronomy course I did earlier on in the year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Dave?
Yeah?
Dave, if anybody would be interested, I wouldn't be too averse to putting a little presentation together for building a home observatory. I know sometimes that crops up.
Brilliant.
Ideal.
Yeah, sounds like you've volunteered yourself there, Kev. Excellent.
Yeah. I'm not sure when. It'd take me a while to pull it together, but I wouldn't mind doing something if people are interested.
No, that sounds brilliant. Yeah, so I've put in the chat there where the scribble pad is. So if you think of anything, pop it on. Okay. So yeah, excellent. So I shall pop those in the schedule a bit later, and we'll be away. Excellent. 19th of January, we've got Paul Fellows coming back to talk about quark stars and strangelets. So that's intriguing. And the 2nd of February, we haven't got a speaker or anything organised for that as well. So you've got any other ideas what we can fit that in that meeting?
Well, if there's 27 of us and everybody puts in 5 or 10 minutes, then that's probably a part 2 of the 5th of January.
Yeah. You want to? Yes. Should we just do a? Okay. We'll see how we go then. I might be chasing people up again if we've only got 2, 3 or 4 for the 5th. Okay. Yeah. We'll leave it as that for now and break it into 2 parts if we need to.
Sounds like a daily topics night.
Yeah, just a general, a bit like the telescopic topics at the Northampton Club. Yeah. And then 16th of February. And of course, if anybody's got anything they've seen online they want to share with us, then, you know, anything like that would be quite good as well. Videos or whatever, you know, we're quite happy to share anything that you've seen astronomy wise that you think, oh, that's pretty good. 16th of February, got Mary McIntyre coming in talking about shadows in space and the stories they tell. And then month after, Catherine Rayner Evans exploring astronomy and space through philately. And then 23rd, we're going to be 1 year old. We're meeting for a year, folks. How time flies when you're having fun, eh?
Yeah, no wonder I've got grey hair.
Right,
Grey hair's better than no hair.
so tonight's meeting is a practical question and answer session, so we want to keep it open to everybody. And of course, if anybody's got any experience or even does it different to what we say, please chip in, because everybody's got a different way of doing things, and that's what I love about this. You're continually learning, continuing seeing what other people are doing and finding out new ways of doing stuff, and it's great. So Phil, I think Phil's got to go to another meeting fairly promptly, so he's going to do about spaceflight mission sources. So where does he get all the information for future space missions? So he's going to do that. I'll put you on first, Phil. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. It's not till 8, so I'll hang around for a bit.
Okay, good. And image capture, Roger said he'd step in and do something about image capture. So he was hoping to show some live stuff, but it's cloudy. But he's got some things lined up for that. And then somebody asked about post-processing images, so we'll have a look at that and ask the general questions and exactly what in post-processing we might need to cover. Polar alignment was one of the other ones, getting your scope polar aligned, and we've had a bit of a discussion here over a year or more about how accurate your polar alignment has to be, so that could be quite interesting. And then focusing as well, which is always good fun, especially if you're using a DSLR or with just a normal lens. It could be a nightmare. And then anything else that crops up that people want to ask, really. So yeah, so that's all I've got to say. So Phil, if you want to start sharing your screen, unless anybody's got any other questions.
Don't forget my PhD, please.
No, nobody got any other questions before Phil talks about spaceflight missions? Okay. No, don't look like it. So if everybody can switch off your webcams and mute yourselves, please. And then Phil,
Right.
I'll leave it.
Can you see me? Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Brilliant.
I'll leave it over to you. Thanks very much, Phil.
Okay, thank you. Well, back in the Apollo days, and certainly when I was starting out in flight, it was very difficult to get hold of information. If it wasn't big news, it wasn't on the telly, wasn't in the newspaper. You'd sometimes trawl around for cut-ins or something like that. So you're very reliant on your subscriptions to your magazines to get all your information. But these days, it's a lot harder to, or a lot easier to find information, but it's harder because you don't know what information it is that you're looking for, because there's something everywhere. So what I'm going to do is, oh, something's happened, Dave.
Oh, it's gone.
Has it gone white?
It's gone back. Now it's fine. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. I don't know if that was you or me that did that.
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to have a look and take you through some of the places that I get all my information from for spaceflight information. So I'm going to cover some YouTube sources that I use, phone apps that I use, podcasts, regular updates that you can get through email, and regularly online searching for your web browser. So for YouTube, there's this one here, which is a company called Seeker. Now, they're an online specialist in life sciences. So they do all sorts of science. So they make programs on plants, animals, people, places on Earth and stuff like that. But they have a dedicated space section with information on the latest launches, and they call it Countdown to Launch. So you can see here, the last 4 videos that they've done, 3 of them have been about recent space launches. So they hint to it very heavily. They show videos online. They're only about 5 minutes each, but it's a good place to get the overview of each mission. If you hear something, you say, oh, I wonder what that's all about, you can go in it. And here you can see you've got the Chang 5 video of the mission that was launched yesterday for China. That's going to be collecting samples from the moon later on this year. In actual fact, it should be back sort of mid to late December. So that's Seeker. Now, NASA Edge, this is NASA's podcast that looks in depth at each mission. So it's the dedicated NASA YouTube channel. It has things that take it to the next level from Seeker. So you'd have sort of 5 minutes intro here, but then NASA would take it to the nth degree. So you can see here they had a whole hour on the Sentinel-6 that was launched at the weekend, the new Ocean one that's been launched. Hang on. Ah, someone's just said Everyday Astronaut on YouTube has a good channel. So yes, so I'll ask at the end if anybody else has got anything that they use. Another one that I use here is Euronews Space Magazine. So this is specifically for the European Space Agency. So Seeker covers a lot, but China and NASA and Russia do a lot. NASA Edge covers specifically NASA, but Euronews covers the European Space Agency. So between them, you've got a whole spectrum of top line and in-depth information. If I move on to, let's move on to JPL. Now, JPL is a NASA one, but it covers Q&A sessions, live in-depth press conferences and launches. So it really goes into what you would see as they announce it to the press. They take you through all the presentations and right in depth. And it's actually the people that design and launch the spacecraft that do the talks, and you get a chance to ask questions. They also, when Perseverance was launched, they had every Thursday between 9 and 9:30 the chance to quiz one of the technicians that is involved in it. So you'd have somebody that would do the guidance, you'd have someone that would do the robotic arm. So yeah, so JPL is a really good one to start getting into some of the detail for NASA. Under here, it's a guy called Scott Manley. Now, he's Scottish, but he lives in California, and he's been YouTubing since 2007. He works for Apple as a software developer, but he's a master of rocket science. So you can see here, he uses a Kerbal Space Simulator program, and he simulates the missions on how they would actually be done. So you can see understand how it's going to happen before you know what to look out for when the time comes. So you've got here how the Dragon will approach and dock the ISS. So he's gone through that through his Kerbal simulator, and he also does other things as well. He's talked about the Psyche mission, and he did an unusual one here, which is unusual for him, is what was the election results do for NASA. So yeah, he's well worth a look at. Moving on to smartphone apps, the good old BBC. So yes, they have their own special space exploration tab, which you can set up under My News. So it's good for updates, especially for European stuff, but it takes you all across the spectrum. And here you've got the Sentinel-6. So when I put this together, that was the big news of the weekend, because that was being launched on Sunday. And down here, they even have a little introduction as to what it was, which they put in a few hours before that. And you can set up alerts on your news as well. So you can choose space exploration. So if anything gets updated in here, you get it onto your smartphone. Space launch schedule. This is a list of missions that's going to launch. So it's a good countdown of when the next launch is going to be happening. You can also go into each one, and it gives you your time in GMT. So you get to choose your time zone, because I know that's something that people have a problem with is, oh, it's such and such EST or such and such PST, but this then gives you it in the GMT time. And if you can watch it online, it puts the link there for you to be able to see it, and then it stacks them all up so you know what's due. So that's a very useful app. You've got here BBC Sounds. BBC Sounds, it shows mainly old missions here because it's part of the BBC World Service. So it's good on catching up on history. But sometimes it has up-to-date information, Like I know when the anniversary came round for the Apollo missions for 11 and 13, Kevin Fong did a very, very good program on both of those, which was well worth catching up on if you haven't already. So that's another interesting one. The BBC have got that nicely for us. The Planetary Radio Science, that's another American one, but it's a society that you can actually join. But they do a free podcast every week, but they go into real detail of a particular subject each time. So they make them relevant if there's something going on. So here we had the Crew Dragon launches go, and they're normally about an hour long. So they're sort of a bit more long haul. And this is the NASA version. NASA, we have a podcast. And again, they go into the details. So we had the Orion one here on the 13th, and then recently we had Plants in Space. So if there's something going on, they'll cover it. If not, they'll pick a topic that's relevant for you to have a listen to. But again, because they're being podcasts, they're obviously a bit longer, but you can listen to them in the car or when you're out walking or something like that. What we have here now is the Explore. Now, Explore is the inbox that you can have, so you can sign up to Explore direct with NASA, and every newsletter of what's happening in NASA in the world of astronomy. So they call it here a weekly bit of space in your inbox. So yeah, so that keeps you up to date on that. And again, when I put this together, the big news was the Sentinel-6 launch at the weekend. Over here is their weekly cast. They call it a vodcast because you can get it on video, you can get it on podcast, you can get it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. They launch it on everything, and it's a 2 to 3 minute video on this week at NASA. So it tells you exactly what's happening. So if you just want to keep regular updates on what's going on, you can easily just delve into that, and 3 minutes later you know what's going on. This one here now, it's online one. This is probably the best online one. It's Spaceflight now, and it literally covers everything to do with space. So you can join. It's a subscription that you can join. But other than that, all of the details are free. So it gives you breaking news on what's happening. It tells you if there's been any changes to recent updates. And of course, it lists all of the flights in order, and it gives you them in GMT, EST, and PST. So there's no issues with trying to work out when it is in the UK. And if there is live coverage, it will put it over here on the side, so they'll all be listed on the same page. Finally, it's this guy. This is a blogger who calls himself Armchair Astronautics. It's Olaf Fron, and his own little blog site has a massive array of different information from space science. So he's got mission history of each planet, so you can go on there, you can have a look at the planet, and it will show you the mission history of everything that's gone there, and a little timeline, and he goes all the way up to 2030 as well, so he tells you what's happening in the future. Space observatories in orbit, so he's got a little graph over here of what observatories we've got in there, and what spectral class they're looking at. So it tells you exactly what's there, and it's even got future missions up here as well. And very optimistically, he's got the James Webb going up in December 2021. So we'll see how that goes. And another thing he has is solar systems missions. So as well as having this for space observatories, which he updates every month, he also updates this every month. So it's a complete overview of all of the missions that we've got currently in the solar system. And it even marks out all of the main bits that are relevant. So like, for example, the Donald Johansson there is an asteroid, but that's relevant because that's what Lucy's going to fly by before it gets to the Trojan asteroids in Jupiter. You've got Psyche up here because Psyche is another mission that's going to be happening here in 2022. So not only can we see exactly what's going on, we can also see what's up and coming. So if there's any changes to what people have planned that's going up, you can then see what's due up. So yes, he updates that every month on his blog site. And if you need any more details, you can just watch the video back and you've got the details there. So that's it from me.
Perfect, Phil.
Does anyone have any questions or anything that they use that I haven't sort of come across, because I'm always interested in getting information quickly rather than having to read loads and loads of stuff to get lots of information. So if anybody uses one, I know we had one in chat that was good. Everyday Astronaut. I've not come across that one. What was that one all about, Gordon?
He runs a YouTube channel where he tends to kind of look into how everyone actually does things. So he's done some really interesting in-depth stuff looking at some of the new methane-based rockets, both the Raptor from SpaceX as well as the BE-4 going from Blue Origin. He also does a lot of other stuff where he's actually holding events live, where he's actually doing live events at launches. And he's just basically, he's an amateur, but he's just super enthusiastic. And so he has a lot of cool information and likes to kind of delve into topics. So he's a good source in terms of getting new information and looking at it from a, an everyday person perspective.
Brilliant. I made a note of that. I know what I'm going to do for the rest of the week then. I prefer the amateur stuff because the people like NASA and ESA, although it's good information, it's very corporate driven, whereas the amateurs will tell you it as it is, which is what you want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Scott Manley. These guys are also on Twitter as well, so you can also follow those guys on Twitter. The other online source you may be interested in is NASA Spaceflight. They also cover a lot of launches and newses and stuff as well.
Yeah, I think I've come across that one before. So, okay. Oh, thank you. Well, that's it from me, Dave. Unless anybody's got any questions.
Yeah. Any questions, Phil? Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. Hopefully, I'll be able to keep up with some. I think my biggest problem is time. So, you have these things that you've got to sit for an hour. I'm not going to be able to do that sort of thing. So if I can get a quick scan through or just quick bullet points, that's
Seeker's perfect because it condenses a whole mission into just a 5-minute clip. Like if you watch that 5-minute clip on the Chang 5, you know everything you need to know.
Okay, so I'll make sure I have a look at that one because I'm pretty bad at keeping up with the missions. That's why I've sort of sent you a quick message. What's happening with that one? So we can sort of schedule the live watch. So, yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Phil. Excellent. Right, any more questions before we move on? No? So, Roger, it's down to you, and you're going to be talking about taking images.
Well, acquiring images. Through the telescope and what formats and what to do. Right, okay. So I'm just going to go through a couple of different softwares that I'm using at the moment to capture images and videos. One is with SharpCap and the other one is with ASI Studio, as I've got a ASI planetary camera which I've purchased recently to catch the opposition of Mars. So let me just share. Right, I'll give you some interfaces of the two programs that I'm using and go and use a brief breakdown of what the camera is capable to share and capture. Unfortunately, as the weather's rubbish outside, I've had to bring it all inside, so it's just showing a blank screen, although the camera is actually there. You can see we've got the basic controls, whether you've got it in mono or color, depending whether you have a mono or color camera, and the bit depth. We've also got whether you want to capture a video or still pictures. If you want a video, you can either have it as a SCR file or as a video file. But if you want to do still pictures, obviously the best way to do it is with the FITS file. That is basically a raw image, which is a bit like a Photoshop raw image, where you can stretch the image out once you've captured the picture that you need to do. And down below we've got the histogram, and we've got the slider up here to increase or decrease the exposure, and then the corresponding histogram which will show the correct stretching of the image. If you want to see a stretched picture to give you an idea what you gradually will achieve, rather than the normal picture that you get from the picture that you actually capturing, because generally when you've saved it and then opened it up in Photoshop, you find everything that is in the picture is down in the dark area down here where my cursor is wiggling around. So you can stretch the picture here and you will get a rough idea of what the picture would look like once you've unstretched it in another program. You can also have different presets in here. So if you do general long exposures, you can save the settings without having to reset the program every time. So that's the basic controls for that. You can change the color brightness, assuming that you have got a color camera, and that's basically the dialog box for capturing images. You can set obviously you can set it up for doing minimal exposures if you're doing solar photography, and then you can really stretch it out. This will go up to 15-minute exposures. So depending on the size of the scope and the faintness of your object, you will be able to capture what you can. I don't think we'll start to do a 15-minute exposure. I think we might get a rather burnt out picture. So that's a quick overview of SharpCap. Now to get a video, I've got an image which I captured before. If I share that with you of what Mars is like once I captured it now I did that in ASI Studio, but I'll give you a rough idea of what will be available as you capture it with this software, which is obviously dedicated for the ASI camera. It's basically the same layout as the SharpCap, but we've got a few other options here. You can either have it fit the window, full size, then we've got whether it's a color or a mono camera, and then what Dave and I like to use is the atmospheric dispersion corrector, where it will automatically let you know how the red and blue channels are affected, so you can adjust the correction on the ADC to blend the spectrum back into a full color image without having a fringing at the top and the bottom. Obviously we've got the red, blue and green channels here to give you an idea of how that will work. Obviously because we wouldn't be able to show you the ADC, but once it's going correctly, you'll get these lines more lined up. We can obviously just set a number of exposures, or how many, just a single exposure, and whether you want a still or a video camera, and then you can just program it up to how you want it. I usually leave the display controls to get rid of any color correction and just leave it to run as it is. But this is basically just to do planetary imaging. They do one for deep sky because it's capable of doing longer exposure controls, because this is just for planetary. So obviously you just need to capture as many frames as you can per second to be able to stack them all and get nice crispy pictures to admire later on. This camera is 1936 by 1096. So it's only basically a 2.1 megapixel camera, which is quite small. It's quite a small chip, but you need the small chip to be able to provide just a small capture through the telescope. It saves rather a large chips from wasting all that information. So with this camera, I can get up to about 135 frames a second, which is pretty good, really. And that's what that is. Now, if I stop sharing that and go on to, I'll give you a quick raw image of Mars that was captured and show you roughly what they look like before they get processed. So share that one. Right, okay, I'll just press the play button, and this is how it looks like through the telescope, captured as a video file straight onto the camera. Unfortunately, the seeing wasn't that brilliant, so it does look a little bit wobbly and in and out, but you do get some clear brief spells of the outlines. That area there is Syrtis Major. And the software will then be able to work out all the points on the surface there once it's analysed it from front to start, and then work out how to compensate and give an overall single frame of what you've taken, compensating for all the wobbling about there. This wasn't the best thing, but it gives you an idea of what some of the images can look like through the telescope. Right, okay. Right, so is there any idea on any questions about the software that I'm using to capture? If any of you have got any of that software that I actually used that is bugging you on what you can do to get the best out of it.
Do you use those for your deep sky stuff as well?
I use basically SharpCat for doing. I've used SharpCat from the beginning. Really, it's the most familiar program that I've used. But with the planetary, I've started using the ASI stuff because the camera seems to like that set of software developed especially for it.
Right. Any other questions for Roger?
Yeah, Roger. I'm using also that ZAO ASI suite. I just didn't see an option for actually doing anything deep sky related. So maybe I got an earlier version of it.
Yeah, the latest one, you've got the, you can do a planetary, you can do deep sky. Let me just try and find the, right, okay. Right, let me just give you a screen grab of that a moment. Okay, screen share. Right, this is the suite of different programs that you can use. So the one I've just shown you is the planetary imaging, just for stacking up single videos as well. Then you've got the deep sky, the live stacking, and a Fitch viewer if you want to see some of the still pictures that you've already captured. This is the latest one which I downloaded tonight, and that's version 1.3. So it's probably worth you having a look, and once you connect it back up, it should automatically recognize which camera it is and then put all the appropriate settings straight into it. That's really helpful. I think I pulled the original file off of the CD that came with the camera. So it probably needs to be a download. So it's actually... So, yeah, you just need to go onto the ZWO site to download the latest software. That's brilliant. Thank you. One other question on your planetary images with Mars. How many minutes of video did you capture there? Well, obviously, the longer the file size, the longer capture that you do, as much as I would like to, the file sizes get absolutely huge. I mean, they can be up to 10 gigabytes per minute. So obviously, depending on your file storage, I try and just have either 1 or 2 minutes, and you usually get quite a few. I usually get about 5,000 frames in 1 minute. So I usually find that's a reasonable amount, although you can, if you want to, have multiple minutes of the Mars or whatever, but then you obviously have to be aware of the rotation of the planet, and you have to derotate it and things like that. So things really get a little bit complicated. But on the whole, I'm usually 1 or 2 minutes is usually long enough for doing the planets. And I've also been doing some recently of the moon as a video clip, but I'm only usually doing that for about 30 seconds, and I usually get quite enough frames there for stacking it as well. And I do find that it does work out quite well, stacking video clips. This is all quite an new learning process for me since I've had this planetary camera. So it's quite interesting.
That's
Roger, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, go on.
I have got both the ASI Studio, because I have bought an ASI 294 camera.
Right.
And I've also got Sharp Cap. But what I have found with the Studio, ASI Studio, if I try and save in anything other than fits, it falls over with a Java problem.
Oh, right.
There's clearly something going wrong, and but it's well beyond my technical knowledge to sort out why.
Well, I'm not aware of that problem, unfortunately. So
I mean, I've been obviously with the ASI camera, I am saving FITS files.
Yeah.
And they're 16-bit files, but then again, I have run into a complication downstream, and that is as soon as I process those files using AstroPixel processor, or trying to, it turns out 32-bit files. All of which is becoming most confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I do, when I process my deep sky, I use AstroPixel processor as well.
Yeah.
Are you using a Mac or a PC?
PC.
All right.
And quite an old one at that.
All right.
You can convert the files.
Well, yes. But and the other complication, again, I've had with AstroPixel processor, I mean, you're going to talk about processing a bit later, is again saving the result. And again, I've so far got a bit confused of whether to save it stretched or not stretched and so on.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah.
I always, when I finished at the end of AstroPixel processor, I save it as a 16-bit TIFF. Once you've seen that, when you get to the final stage 9 tools, you can see that it's been, when you see the picture, you see it is stretched, then you can do the tools down on the right hand side of all the different things that you can do with all the adjustments. I don't usually do too much to that, because once you start adjusting something on the other side, you usually can't get it back to how it was.
No, it's difficult. I agree.
So, I generally, as long as it looks pretty good, I'll save it as a TIFF. Although when I open up the TIFF, once it's saved back into AstroPixel processor, it looks marginally lighter, but I don't usually find that too much of a problem.
And you do your final processing, what, Photoshop?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a few special actions dedicated to astrophotography, with deep sky objects and bringing things out. So there's some quite good actions to be got to help tune the picture up to how you would like it.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm in very early stages, and
we all have been.
Sorry?
We all have been. I've only been starting. I mean, I've only just started this March of last year. So
Oh, well, you're well ahead. I've only had the camera. Prior to that, I used a DSLR on the telescope, but and got some quite reasonable results. But that was using free software like Deep Sky Stacker and Iris.
Yeah.
And it worked. But the problem there was the obvious one of trying to get a decent focus. So,
yeah,
not easy.
No.
No. Okay, any other questions for Roger? Anybody got anything they'd like to add that they do that might be of help to other people?
Dave, I think there's a couple of questions in chat that have come up.
Oh yes, I have. Yep. Hold on. Yeah. So how do you decide your exposure settings, especially for deep sky? Ooh, there's a good one.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about gain, Roger, so which is related to that. I'd be interested.
Well, in SharpCap, there's once you've connected your camera up, you basically go down to the. Oh, hang on. Let me do a screen share of. Oops. Let me give you a screen share of this. This is with SharpCap, and I usually go down to the sensor analysis, and it goes through a process of picking out an area from the sensor, and it goes through measuring going through the EADU, and it gives you a plot down through here. So it basically gives you the length of time against how many photons it collects, and then you do another one on gain to give you an idea of how the optimal exposure is. You can either do it for optimal maximum exposure. So if you want to work out how many exposures that you want to gain overall on your object, it'll tell you what the gain is and how many seconds that you need to give it to get the optimal picture with the minimum amount of noise. I can't show you here at the moment.
It gives you a graph, doesn't it? And it shows you where your noise is highest and
crosses
comes
down
down
this way, and another set of crosses going down that way, and it gives you a chart. So you can, and then it gives you a table to work out, to show you how many photons you get on each pixel per amount of gain, and then you can work out what your maximum amount of gain is for the best exposure. For the Altair Astro that I've got, it's usually about a gain of about 400 on here, and then I usually put about anything between 2 and 5 minute exposures on that. So it's usually about four minutes or so at 400 gain, and that usually comes out quite well.
Yeah, if you go onto YouTube, there's a video of the guy that wrote SharpCap talking about exposures, because we've been brought up in the past with just getting as long an exposure as possible, and he talks about you don't have to actually do that as long as you get the integration time. It doesn't matter how long your exposures are, as long as you collect the same amount of time. It's quite interesting because obviously he knows the mathematics behind the imaging. So it's quite an interesting talk if you can find it. It was done at the not the International Astronomy Show, the Practical Astronomy Show last March. So that's really good if you can catch up on that and have a look, because that's really interesting talk about what's going on when you take your images.
Yeah, because there's debates on whether you take lots of short exposures or longer exposures but fewer of them.
That's right, yeah. And he's saying no, just do lots of really short exposures. Yeah, so hey.
But then I saw Dylan O'Donnell down in Australia, where he did a 60-minute exposure, and he was comparing that with 61-minute exposures, and it was quite an interesting result.
Oh, what was
how
the
good
result?
the 60-minute exposure was without the 61-minute exposures.
Right.
Although I was surprised he didn't get a lot of blowout on that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
We digress.
It's an interesting subject, and you know, yeah, just looking into the ins and outs of it is just an absolute minefield and a nightmare. And there's so much information to take on, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, all the different companies have different settings, but obviously a lot of them use the same Sony chip.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or any points to add to that? No? Okay. Move on then. What was the next subject? I can't remember now. So a bit of image processing. So what about image processing would people like to know? Any specifics?
Roger's covered a lot of it there, I guess, but...
Well, you've talked about the capturing, but not necessarily the actual processing afterwards. So is there anything about processing that people would like to know?
I always struggle in getting the colour out. Where Roger is there with his... Is that the Pleiades behind him?
Pleiades, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get that colour out? I can get all the stars, the colour in the stars, but to get that the colour...
Yeah.
Well,
depending on who you listen to, some say you shouldn't get too much colour out, and some people get far too much colour out.
Yeah,
but
like a rainbow.
Yeah. Let's see if I've got something I can show you.
And as I go along, Dave, I see so many people with black and white pictures that, like, where's the colour for it? So
yeah, well, it depends if they've taken a monochrome image. Yeah. Obviously, there's not going to be
I appreciate that
as much there. Hold on, I'm just trying to find a picture that I could use. Not necessarily deep sky. I could use this one. Right, let me. Oh, I've lost.
I can show. Do you want me to show in the Pleiades one, John?
Yeah, go on, Roger. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Right, I've got. Right, let me go and share this a minute. I've got basically a one which is unstretched, and you can only see black space and the stars. Right, I need to get out of this a minute. Let me go close that down. I need. Where's me? I've lost me screen share. Right. Share screen, Photoshop. Right. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So this is basically one which I've just left unstretched. So all you can see is white dots and black sky. So basically, when you look at the go away. The histogram, it's way over here. So what we need to do is just to keep stretching and stretching to get the information. As you can see, it's just gonna. I'll do it gradually. And as you can see, it's gradually coming out, and as you can see, it's gradually coming away. And I'll show you a good, quick way of getting rid of any color cast in the picture. I found this out from another YouTuber. Right, let me just give this a... Now, because I'm using a color camera, which is RGGB, you've got this horrible color cast. See how bad that is?
Yeah.
Right, okay, I'm going to get rid of that and you'll be gobsmacked. It's very easy in Photoshop, although you can probably do it in Affinity as well. So we use the eyedropper tool, click an area that has got the color cast there, right? That is now in the box as a foreground. We'll put it as a background by flipping it to the background. We'll make a new layer. And then we will fill that layer with that color that I've picked from the green background. Okay. Go back to the original layer that we started from. Image, apply image, and then down to the blending, we go to subtract. Click OK. Ta-da!
Bingo.
There we are. We've neutralized that green. And immediately you can start to see some of the color coming out of the nebulosity. Yeah. So we can then carry on stretching and stretching. And then we can do some levels. I'll just bring that down a bit. And then bring that up a bit. There we are. So you can start to see from that black and white image, we've started to get some of the nebulosity back.
I've not been stretching it enough, Roger. I've just been doing it a few times. You've done it quite a few times.
You have to be, yeah, just steady so you don't overdo it.
Yep.
But you've got the basic principles there of the nebulosity starting to come through.
Yeah.
And then I've got some actions down here, which...
Oh, gosh.
These are actions that I bought off another site that will give you specific astrophotography actions to either reduce the stars, bring the nebulosity out, star spikes, bring the darks out with the detail, sharpen it up, bring out the color of the stars, all sorts of things. So that's quite a useful little lot of tools that I generally use most of the time. So that's a quick and dirty way of showing you how much info there is when you just got a black and white image and just keep stretching and stretching. That's a 16-bit TIFF.
Yeah. How do you get the color out of that now?
If you want to get, let me just get the background. Yeah. This isn't quite the right way to do it, but what we can probably do is do you use Photoshop?
Using Affinity Photo.
All right. Well, we can.
It's nearly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring out the bring the box out. And the vibrance maybe a little bit. I mean, I have to stretch it out a bit more to get some of the detail, but it's just a matter of tweaking it just to one's personal taste.
And that's the vibrance and saturation, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you can adjust it a bit more to however you want. That's not quite the same as the one that I've got as my picture behind me, but that's the picture that I used to get it. Yeah.
How long's the exposure on that, Roger?
Now that was
roughly
3 hours of total, and they were 60-second exposures, so 180 one-minute exposures.
Oh gosh, okay.
And Roger, what scope did you have? What was your telescope for that?
It's this little beauty here. It's a William Optics GT71.
Okay.
And it's a triplet, and I bought that last September at the show at Warwickshire. I blame Sandy Whitten. He was with me.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks,
That's
Roger.
okay. Anyway, anything else?
Not for me.
All right.
Okay.
Was there something else about PhD?
Oh, that was from me as well, Roger, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, I've got a bit that I did for a telescope workshop a while ago, so I could go through that.
When it says push here dummy, I think, yes, I'm quite sure.
Yeah, the trouble is, I was spoilt when I first did it because it worked almost first time, and I've not really delved into it any deeper. But anyway, what I'll do, I'll share my screen.
The trouble with me, Dave, is I keep reading stuff on the internet.
Yeah, well, that's the trouble. Yeah, you do keep reading stuff, and you read more and more, and it confuses. Are you still seeing that, or is it gone?
You've got a PowerPoint slide deck up at the moment, Dave.
You've just got you're not the slide itself.
No, the 136.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, okay. Let's stop share then, and then share it again. If I do screen one, share that one, and then that should. Yeah, is that computer control?
Blank.
No, blank again.
Yeah.
It's not got computer control at the top, no.
Yes, computer control. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is a bit I did for a workshop probably about 4 years ago now, about getting computer control. GoTo, a lot of telescopes have GoTo, but again, I always say no substitute for learning your way around the stars, so make sure you do as much as possible. And again, it can be bought off the shelf or added later, and then you use planetarium programs to control your telescope. So this is, when we all those years ago in 1987 when we started Bedford Astronomical Society, this was the life of dreams, where you could just click on a computer program and get the telescope to go, and it's fantastic. We have that now. And then auto guiding as well, on stars or brighter objects. And a few years ago when we had Comet Lovejoy around, I was actually auto guiding on the comet, so the actual telescope was auto guiding on the nucleus of the comet. So amazing, because you can get really good details of comet if you can keep up with the movement. Fantastic. Some of them can actually be made to follow a particular path, so that can be useful as well if the comet's not bright enough. And most of the software used is completely free. So what's needed? You need some sort of physical connection between the computer and the mount, and that's what we call an EQ-DIR cable or similar, and around about 30 or 40 pound. And you need some software, EQ ASCOM control, which is completely free. So this ASCOM control is completely free, and something like EQ mod. So for the Skywatcher, especially, EQ mod is fantastic, or whatever's equivalent. For a Mac, because I know John's listening and he's a Mac, there is an EQ Mac program which does work. I did try it probably around about 6 or 7 years ago, and that works really well as well. So it's EQ Mac, that is out there, but I don't think it's as well supported as EQ mod. And then the planetarium software, of course, and there's so many different options about. I use one called C2A, and that's one I found really nice for comets, because it just automatically imports all the comets. So if there's a new comet, it's already on there, and I can go put up a track of the comet on the screen and get the computer to go to it as and when I need to, without any faffing around. So that's the one I use. It's not as nice looking as something like Stellarium or Cartes de Ciel, but it works for me. And then the auto guiding, as Paul's asked about PhD, Push Here Dummy, which is again completely free, and it's all fantastic software. You can actually donate, and I have donated 2 or 3 times for that software, because it just does work. So this is what the EQ-DIR cable looks like, and depending on which mount you have will depend on the type of cable you get. So the one on the left, this one actually connects into the handset, but if you've got a mount like mine, the EQ6, this just fits in where the handset fits onto the mount itself. so you don't actually need the handset once it's connected. And that's my preferred option, because I did try connecting it up to the handset at the very beginning, but it was a bit sluggish and it was a bit juddery and it didn't quite work. But once I took the handset off and just connected the cable directly, so have a look online and see if you can find these EQ DIR cables specific for your particular mount. And you know, if anybody wants to come to me, I can help you out with that. And then this is the EQ mod. So once you've got all the software installed, you've got ASCOM installed and EQ mod, there's lots of controls you can set up here. And once you get connected, usually you just see this little bit on the left, so that's the bit that normally pops up. But if you press this button here, this whole big thing in here pops up as well. You can set your location, elevation, etc., etc. Set up all sorts of stuff in here. And then joystick, if you've got a joystick on your computer, you can use that. Once you've initialized and configured that properly, you can use the joystick to move the telescope up, down, left and right while you're at the eyepiece, which is fantastic, really, really useful. Or if you're sitting at a computer, you can use the north, south, east and west buttons to control the scope, and that comes in particularly useful, especially this week when I was doing live streaming of Mars through the telescope. I was sitting in here, but because I had EQ mod up on the screen, if Mars started to drift out of view, I could just click the buttons from in here and bring it back into view of the camera again. So you know, so as well as a joystick, you've got the buttons on the screen as well. And then you can set the track rate, so it's sidereal rate, lunar rate, solar rate, and a comet rate, so you can actually set positions for the comet at certain times, and it will follow the path of the comet for you. So there's loads in there, and it's all free software, which is just amazing. So this is ASCOM, so that's the link between EQ mod and the computer, so you just download it, whatever the most up-to-date version is. And the Celestron mounts, some of those have to have a different interface to connect them, so watch out for those, but it does tell you on the install when you go in to do it, so just check that as well. This is C2A. So this is what C2A looks like. As you can see, it's very basic in the screen, but when you go in there, you go telescope, connect to telescope, and then EQ mod comes in. Here it is, and then you click unpark, press tracking, then just click on something on the screen, and off goes the telescope. And when you actually get there, you use the joystick or the buttons to actually get what you've got in the center of the field of view, and then you just click right on the object on the screen and go calibrate on object, and that's it. The telescope now knows exactly where it's pointing. And so what I normally do, we always say to people, learn to star hop around the sky, where even when I'm using computer control, if there's a comet, say here, I will go to a bright star nearby and then gradually work my way across and identify the fields of view as I go to make sure I'm pointing in the right place. But if you're using plate solving, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, that even becomes even more useful and much easier. So there's a telescope hand controller as well. So if you go here, hand controller, you get this one. So when you finish, always disconnect. So park to home position once you've finished, and then disconnect, and then that disconnects everything from the computer before you turn it off. Otherwise you'll find all sorts of comm problems going here and you'll have trouble closing it down and it's just messy. Okay, so always disconnect from the mount there. PhD, push here dummy, you can have this running as well as the software. So what I normally do, if I'm guiding this way, I'll have C2A open and get the scope to where I want it. I'll then open PhD, get that all running as well, and then so you click down here and you can connect whatever camera you're going to be doing the guiding with, which is on your guide cam, and then the mount, and then because it's set up exactly the same way as it is in EQ DIR and ASCOM, it should just connect. Just click connect all, and then away it goes. So it does a little bit of calibration. So what it does, it picks a guide star, it moves up and down a few times, left and right a few times, and then this green cross appears. That means it's guiding. And then you've got a little target you can reveal here, and you can see all these little spots of where it's moved to, and then it's drawn it back in to keep it guiding, and you get a nice little graph here that shows you how well or not the guiding has gone throughout the session. Yeah, I know Paul's put some things on there about what do these pulse guide settings and things mean. So
It's about 6 slides back, Dave, on that EQ mod one.
On this
just
on that one.
Yeah, top right hand corner. That's gone.
Yeah,
pulse
on
guide
here. So
settings.
these are the. This is how aggressively or not it'll correct.
My sliders are right across the other left hand side.
Oh, on the left hand side, yeah.
So I've moved
this screenshot I did. This probably wasn't connected at the time, but anyway, But that'll tell you how aggressively or not it's going to correct. Because if you have it too aggressive, you know, as it drifts off, it'll overcorrect and it will send it the other way. So you need to adjust those just to make sure that it's finely tuned. So it might be, if yours are right over on the left hand side, it might not be aggressive enough, so it's not correcting enough.
Yeah, that's where it started. I'm put them on 0.6 at the moment. So
yeah, so start about midway and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
0.6 is a pretty good setting in my experience.
Yeah. Again, you know, I just, when I originally set this up, it all worked, and I've never touched it since. So it works. So I don't, you know, but I know Kev did a lot of investigation into that, didn't you, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but I did lots of tests and trials using the I can't remember the name of it now because it's a year ago. You can display the guiding graph. No, not the one at the bottom of the screen there.
Yeah.
Into the when you're doing the when it nudges east, west, north, south, it produces a graph to show how well it's responding. And if you change the pulse guide settings and optimize that graph, that works quite well. It takes a lot of time really to do.
So here's an animation of it in action, really. So you can see here's the guide star it's picked, or I've picked, and it's guiding. So you've got the green cross, which you can always see is there. You've got the guiding here. So this is obviously not as good as the graph I showed you a little while ago. And you can see, oh, there you go. So yeah, and then you can see this shows you how much it's corrected each one to bring it back into line again. And if you watch this little cross here, you can see the telescope's moving backwards and forwards, and it's continually correcting to try and get it into, I don't know what was happening there, but you can see it's continually correcting to make sure that the guide star stays where it should in your images.
Dave, it's probably what there is a big school of thought on the web. I think SGL, there was a huge discussion some time ago about don't obsess about getting guide accuracy, you know, spot on. You see some people who aim for like 0, you know, 0 on the graph there, which is not that important in some cases. It all depends on the image scale for your particular setup.
Yeah.
And you know, once you're achieving guiding that's optimized to the image scale, going better than that just achieves nothing.
Yeah, the acid test is to look at the image you've got. If it's if the stars aren't trailed, it's fine.
Yeah,
you know, don't worry about getting that graph any better. Yeah, and that's the same with polar alignment as well, which is another something else we're going to talk about tonight. But I can just see what the time is. Again, polar alignment. Yes, it's good to get it. But if you're auto guiding a lot of the time, it doesn't have to be absolutely spot on. I think that's the end of that one. So yeah.
I think the planetary doesn't have to be as critical as the deep sky, really.
In fact, with planetary, I would always advise people to let the planet drift across the chip. And then if you're not using too big a chip, then use 1.5 drizzle, because that'll use subpixel interpolation, so you actually end up with an image bigger than the chip you've got, and you get high resolution.
And it avoids all the dust bunnies.
And all the dust bunnies seem to smear out of the way as well, which is another bonus of it.
I think my problem was, Dave, though I started using it about 3 or 4 days ago. The cloud came over. Then I got angry with it because it said the star's not moving enough. I thought, well, that's the idea of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's when it's calibrating. If it's calibrating and it's not moving enough, then it says, sorry, the star hasn't moved, so I haven't been able to calibrate, so I don't know how your mount's behaving. Because that's the whole point of the calibration, is to tell, if I push it this far, how far does the star move? And once it knows that, it then knows how to actually move the scope to guide properly with the configuration you've got, because obviously all the focal lengths of your guide scopes, all the chip sizes are going to be different. So, it has to work that all out first before it can guide.
Yeah, it needs to know what the backlash is.
Yeah, and the backlash as well, because there's a certain amount of backlash. So as you're going from left to right and up and down, there's a little bit of play in there. So it has to work out what play there is to make it, so it can make up for that as well.
Can I ask a question? When you flip over the meridian, say you're looking at something at the east side and then you change objects to go to the west side, do you recalibrate on your PhD?
You don't have to. I think there's an option in there to actually flip, isn't there? So what it does, it reverses so that it should,
compensate the opposite way around.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Okay, that's handy to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So anything else we haven't thought of?
I shall keep playing and hope the clouds stay away.
Yes. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
So polar alignment of an equatorial mount. Okay, so this is something I did for the workshop. So you've got the polar finders in the mounts. So you sight on Polaris and locate it in position. So what you might do, you might have, this is the old, I'll go into that in a minute, but this is the old graticle you used to get, and you got this ring and you got the plough and Cassiopeia on the graticle. So the first thing you have to do is to physically move the mount in azimuth and the other one, and get that located so that it was in line with Cassiopeia and the plough. Okay, so rotate the scope itself so it was round in the same direction. Although you couldn't see those through the scope, you've got them aligned.
Yeah.
And then
they're not to scale in the graticule.
Well, I'll tell you that in a moment.
Yeah.
So what you do, you look through the finder and you see Polaris, and it won't be it will be somewhere in the field of view, hopefully. And then you physically move the mount so that is in the position given on that circle. So this is North Celestial Pole, and this is a half-degree circle where Polaris should be. Okay, so that's the old graticule. The way of actually finding where Polaris was, and of course, depending on the time of day, year, etc., it will be in different parts of this circle. Okay, and that's why you align these with Cassiopeia and the plough, so that circle is in the correct position. Of course, they've changed the graticule now, haven't they? Has anybody got a more up-to-date Skywatcher?
No.
It doesn't have the plough and Cassiopeia. And I've had a couple of people contact us to say, well, I think they've given us the South Celestial Pole one, and I haven't got that on here. But there's a utility, I'll show you that in a moment, but there's a utility where it's polar finder, and it produces that same graticule, and you can see, and it puts Polaris where it would be at the times that you're out observing. So 10:51 it's here. 21:21 it's a bit further round, 23:51, and you can see it's moving around as the Earth's rotating under pole, so you can get it in the right place. Okay,
my ATQ5's got that one.
Yeah, but if you let me now,
you can also use SharpCap for
SharpCap is brilliant.
Yeah, SharpCap. I've not done that on mine, I must admit. I should do.
That's very, very good, I think.
Providing you've not got a very tiny field of view, then it'll do it very well.
Yeah, so this is the latest Skywatcher one. All you get is this. You can see that, okay? Is this clock face? Okay, so whether you're using the SynScan app or whether you're got one of the newer Skywatcher mounts, it's got. Yeah. So it's just got this clock face, and rather than 24 hours, which would have made sense to me, it's got 12 hours on it, which doesn't sort of make sense, but there you go. But if you run this app, you can see it's got the graticle, and it shows you where Polaris should be at this minute. And so when you look through your Skywatcher mount, you just make sure that this is on Polaris, and Polaris is actually located where it's telling you to locate it on that graticle.
Can I come in?
The main challenge with those is getting the 0 in the right place.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter whether 0's down here, as long as you get, because that's going to be the North Celestial Pole. So this is equidistant all the way around. So I don't think it matters as long as you look through.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't.
And you can see that graticule. Then, as long as Polaris is there, as long as you put it somewhere there, that's good enough. And I didn't notice.
I'm a bit OCD about having the 0 at the top.
Yeah, and George has put, how can I polar align when Polaris isn't visible? That's, if you've got something like Sharp Cap, that's got a tool that tells you how far you need to move the mount to get it aligned properly.
You still need to see the Polaris, though.
You've still got to be within 5 degrees for it to work.
Yeah, but
it's
as long
very
as you know
good.
As long as you've got a good compass and you know where north is, you should be able to get it fairly close, I would have thought. And yet the way that I've done it, if I've needed to set up in the daytime to either do solar work or try and get some planets during the daytime, what I do is I've got a refractor. So what I will do is set the refractor up, get it all connected to the computer, point it at the sun, and then once it thinks it's pointing at the sun, I'll then physically move the mount without moving the axis of the telescope so that I get the sun coming through the telescope, then lock it in position, and then that should then be polar aligned. And on quite a number of occasions, I've actually gone out and done that, and then gone out that night and then auto-guided without even polar aligning it again. So, and then that started a big argument on social media at one point. I think Kev was involved in that as well, where people were saying, "Oh, I've got this Polari utility. It's fantastic. It gets me polar aligned really, really easily." And other people saying, "I spent all night trying to polar align." I'm sitting there, why? Why are you spending all night? I'm out there. I'm auto guiding. It's working fine, and I'm getting as rough as I can. That'll do, and off it goes, and it just works. Because the whole point of auto guiding is it's compensating for any movement. So if it's slightly off pole, it's going to compensate for that because it's either moving up or moving down. So it'll compensate for it.
Dave, if I could just relate a short anecdote on that point that you mentioned there. I originally polar aligned using the Skywatcher mount, as you described, just moving Polaris into the little circle, and I think it was spot on. And my images were great. I didn't have I couldn't see any elongation of the stars, no trailing, no nothing. The image quality was superb. It was only a few years later I started using Sharp Cap, and I discovered that my polar alignment was nearly 2 degrees out.
Yeah.
So I realigned using Sharp Cap, and the images were just the same. Absolutely no change in the image quality whatsoever. So that taught me that polar alignment is, depending on your image scale, I do stress that, but polar alignment is not critical in many, many cases. And I would strongly urge people not to obsess over it. It's all image quality for images.
Can I just say, though, the tool included with Sharp Cap, I have tried it out once, in fact, a couple of nights ago. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
In the way that it does the pleat solving.
You're right. It is. It is great.
And then indicates which way you've got to move the mount. And I got down to less than a minute of error on each of the axes.
How long did that take you, Chris?
About quarter of an hour.
Right. Okay. That's not too bad.
But I did start from a basic polar alignment done, as you described, by crawling underneath the mount and sighting up through the polar scope. Again, it's an old Skywatcher EQ6. So at least that gave me a starting position, which was reasonably close.
Yeah.
But certainly I was impressed with the way that that tool functioned.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. SharpCap is great, and I use it for polar alignment now. But I'm just suggesting that for people who don't have that level of software to do polar alignments, don't lose too much sleep over it. It's if you
right, you don't need to. No.
I rough align using the compass app on my phone. I just stand about 2 or 3 meters away from the scope, line up the compass to the north and visually align it with the mount, and I find that gets me within about half a degree.
Yeah, it's that's kind of techniques. I've got a piece of heavy, basically 10 mil thick polycarbonate, which is like a template and fixes on the top of the tripod before I actually put the mount head on. And I get that level using a spirit level, obviously, and basically a walking compass. And that gets me to a starting point where when I put the actual mount head on, I can then see Polaris in the finder scope, in the polar scope.
Yeah. Okay, well, someone asked about focusing.
Yeah, focusing, always a problem.
Now, the Bartonov masks are fantastic. Now, they're about 15 quid, I think, for the smaller ones, about 20, 30 quid for the bigger ones. And you can buy them, and they're optimized for your telescope. Okay, so the size and positions of the slots in the Bartonov mask are optimized for your scope, but don't go too great pains about it, because I've got this one, and that's the one I won in a raffle at Culling a few years ago. Do you remember, Kev?
Yeah.
And it fits an 8-inch telescope. So I didn't buy it. It wasn't optimized for my scope. I put it on my Macnu. It works fantastically. Get nice diffraction spikes. I've also got a 10-inch reflector. It's a little bit bigger. It fits on. You get diffraction spikes. I've even got my C11, and despite the fact it's smaller than the C11, I can still use it on the C11. It produces diffraction spikes. So don't get too hung up about getting a Bartonov mask for every single telescope you've got. What they won't be optimized, so the diffraction spikes won't be quite as good, but they'll still be there, and you can still focus. And focusing is always a nightmare. With a camera, it's a bit more problematic. If you've got a telephoto lens, this one works really well. So I can use that on the telephoto lens on the camera to get focus, because although it says infinity on the setting on the camera, it's not at infinity,
It's not.
as you will find out. So what you need to do is to define the sweet spot. And what I normally do, once I've found the focus, I'll put a bit of tape on there if I can. I know some people, they put a sticker on it and put a mark on the 2 stickers so that when they're in line, they know they're in focus. So there's loads of ways of doing that. But, with a lens, it's a bit more difficult. But the Bartonov masks are fantastic. And what that does, as you can see here, we've got these slots, and they let the light in, and they produce these diffraction spikes. So that's a bigger one, that's a smaller one. And this is the sort of image you get when it's really out of focus. And it used to take me absolutely nearly an hour sometimes to get focus. And it's an absolute nightmare. Used to have what they call a Hartmann mask, where you have like 2 or 3 slots, depending on. And then as you focus, they came together. But as soon as they came together, are they absolutely together, or are they not quite together? And it was still a problem. But these are fantastic. So this is my 10-inch Dobsonian pointed at Polaris. And I've put that Bartonov mask on. And what I've done, you can see I've just pointed it at Polaris. There's Polaris. You can see the shape of the Bartonov mask. And then what you'll see, it'll wobble as I start to focus it. And then as it gets more and more into focus, you see those diffraction spikes developing. Here they come, they're starting to appear now. And you get 3 diffraction spikes, you get 2 that are crossed over, and you get another one that travels up and down between them. So there we go, so we're getting near to focus now. Nearly there.
Nearly.
Yeah, nearly there. But see how quick that is?
Yeah.
And once you've got it, bang, you just lock your focus and away you go. But what I would say is, throughout the night, keep checking it. You know, when you stop taking one image and you move the telescope around, just check it again. So there you go. I'm now defocusing it again, and just to show you how easy it is just to get back into focus. It's an amazing bit of kit, you know. There you go, bang, straight back into focus again. Really, really easy to use.
And don't forget to take it off.
And don't forget to take it off once we've all done that. Yeah, we've all done that. You get lovely diffraction spikes around all your star images.
My friend down in Torrevieja did that. It wasn't until he put the scope away that the thing fell off that he realised what he was doing. 4 hours later.
You get some nice effective images though, didn't you?
Yes.
Right, any other questions about anything we've done?
What do you use for? What do you focus on when you focus with you're trying to focus a planet?
Oh, it's a little bit more problematic.
Do you just focus on the planet visually?
Yeah,
or do you go with the star?
The trouble is, if you go to a star and focus, and then try and get the planet in the field of view, it's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's an absolute nightmare unless it's really close to a really bright star. But what I do, I go and I just try and get it as close as I can by eye, really. And then I've got an electronic focuser that I've got attached to the scope. And what you will find when you're on a planet, because you're magnifying it so much, just slight changes in the temperature and the atmosphere keep changing the focus. So I'm quite often changing focus backwards and forwards really, really slowly, just trying to keep it sharp while it's taking the images, or even while it's taking the images. So yeah, because they call it lucky imaging, don't they, this webcam type imaging. And if you're going backwards and forwards between focus, you're going to get some that are really, really sharp. So that's what I do. I try and keep judging it and keep by eye changing that focus to make it as sharp as I can. But it is really difficult. Planets are tough, especially Jupiter and Saturn at the moment being as low as they are in the sky.
Dave, can I offer up a tip for DIY Bartonov mask? If you've got a lens or a scope and you don't have a mask for it and you want one, laser printer, program to do the design as a PDF, print it onto clear acetate. You don't have to cut anything out. It's not as good as a shop bought one.
It still works, does it? It comes through, enough light comes through.
It works really well. It takes just a few minutes to output, and there's none of this fiddling around with a sharp knife trying to cut things out.
Yeah, because that was one of the early ones I did. In fact, it was the same week that I won this Bartonov mask. I had one that I printed off on photo paper, laminated and cut out, and it was working really nicely. And that weekend, my mate left it out in the damp, so it was all soggy and horrible the next morning. But luckily, that Saturday night, I won that to replace it, so that's good.
Well, the problem I've got is my latest scope's a 12-inch, and I can't find acetate film wide enough to print one.
Yeah.
So I think I'll do what you suggested and just make one for a
smaller one, and yeah, see if it works.
Yeah.
Be interested to hear. Yeah, good. Has that covered everything? Oh, dew control. That was another one that somebody put on the. Was that Gordon? He's just.
Yeah, I was just really kind of asking what people were using for dew control in terms of, I had a horrible session earlier this week where everything was just completely sopping wet. I couldn't see through the finder scope. Everything was just kind of like steaming up, and I just kind of packed up. And I'm just wondering what people were using in terms of for just kind of, whether using covers or whether they'd actually had kind of like, the dew control warming kind of wraps that you put around the telescope.
Well, I use a hairdryer. When I see a problem, out comes the hairdryer. I don't know what the neighbours think in the early hours of the morning, but hey, you know, the hairdryer comes out, and especially with the C11 or the Mac Nuke, because you've got the corrector plate at the front. I do have dew shields, but of course they're not enough. On certain nights, it does dew up. But yeah, hairdryer I use.
Hairdryer is an interesting solution. Thank you.
Yeah, but of course that does create its own problems, because once you put the hairdryer on, it warms up the corrector plate, so therefore the image changes, focus changes. Oh, yeah, air turbulence changes, so you create other problems.
No, but basically, I mean, I'm using a Newtonian, which doesn't itself suffer from getting covered in dew.
Yeah, they do take a lot longer.
But the finder scope does,
yeah.
and I've got a Telrad, and that's even worse. But in fact, I've got dew heater bands for both the finder scope and the Telrad, and that really works quite well.
Yeah, yeah, there are heated dew shields and dew bands that produce a bit of warmth. But I remember a few years ago, the big thing used to be on cool your telescope. Make sure it's really cooled down before you use it. And now they're sticking heater bands on them. How trends change, eh?
There was a chat from Jenny there, Dave.
Sorry?
There was a chat from Jenny.
No, you don't need a dew shield for a Newtonian, because a Newtonian, all the optics are inside. They take a lot longer to dew up. I've had a few people ask about getting a dew shield for a Newtonian, but because they're inside the tube, that acts like a dew shield, really.
That's not strictly accurate, Dave. If you've got
no, they do dew up, but they take a lot longer.
No, but if you've got a flexi tube where you've just got a little short piece at the end.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
they
the flexi tubes could suffer quite a bit. Yeah.
But I'm experimenting with a little DIY, not the DIY thing. On YouTube, I bought some USB glove heaters, and they're basically carbon fiber pads, and they run from a USB power pack. So I've actually trimmed one so it fits on the back of my secondary mirror. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet. I only did this at the weekend. But the idea is that it'll warm up about another 10, 15, 20 degrees above ambient. So the idea is when things start to dew up, I'll just have a little power pack, press the button to switch it on, give it 5 minutes of warmth, switch it off again, carry on with the observation. I don't know if it'll work, but I'll let you know when I've had a chance to try it out.
Always interested to hear other people's tips.
And it costs £3.80.
The thing is, it's just trying to keep it a couple degrees above ambient, right?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people use those foam gym mats and cut those to size and wrap them around the ends.
Yeah, I've got that
That's a
as
cheap
well.
way of doing it.
Yeah, camping mat.
Yeah, camping mat. Yeah.
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 Or no, yoga mat.
Yeah. Or even a new one, you can pinch off someone who does yoga. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Is that okay? Is that covered most things for this one?
I think so. It's
a good session.
It's just the whole processing thing is that really is a voyage and a half to me.
It certainly is. Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah.
There's a man with some good books, so you need to look him up.
Yeah, I got a comment from Alan Dyer. Do you know Alan Dyer? Who's this very renowned astrophotographer. He suddenly said, "Oh, do you realise this is the Windows version? You haven't said anything about it being the Windows version." Oh, yeah, it's true, I haven't. So so I'll have to put that on my website to make sure it's definitely the people know it's the Windows version that I cover in the book. But there you go.
I mean, I've been trying to understand this book by Chris Woodhouse.
Right, yeah.
It's quite heavy going in places with some quite involved mathematics.
Yeah, if you want to have a nice overview of astrophotography, setting up your gear, etc., Steve Richards' books are really good. From the Chantilbury Observatory, and his original one was can't remember what it's called. But look up Steve Richards.
Yep, I've made a note.
Chantilbury Observatory, and his ones are really good.
Does Steve Richards make every photon count?
Oh, that's it. Make every photon count. Yeah, but he's got a new one as well, most recently, and he did an absolutely great demonstration of using Photoshop. Because I've never used levels. Well, I use levels right at the very end more than the main processing. But the way he processes his images, he uses levels, and what he does is he does very, very small steps, one after the other, adjusting the levels, and he does exactly the same thing you do in curves, but he uses levels. And if you have a look at Stargazer's Lounge, they do this stargazing series on a Sunday night. If you have a look on YouTube and find his one, and he'll show you how he does that. And that's something that I haven't really used levels, because I always found it a very blunt tool, and it was really aggressive. So what he does very, very tiny little changes, one after the other, and it achieves the same result, because mathematically you're changing the value of the pixels to reveal the picture that's hidden right down the dark end of the image. So yeah, so have a look at his book, because I think that's covered in his second book, Black Magic or something it's called. Yeah, Dark Art or Black Magic or something like that. So yeah, but have a look on YouTube, because the stargazing, he did a demonstration of it. That's really good. So it's quite interesting watching how differently people process stuff, and it's great because you're always learning, and I'm always learning still. So even when I do my workshops, somebody come in, they'll do something. Oh, how did you do that? And so you're all learning. So it's all good fun. Okay, so what's the time? It's I'm at 8:45, so that's been a long session, folks. But anyway, thanks to Phil, who's had to go because he's got another meeting. Or had another meeting, and thanks to Roger for doing his bit on image processing. So I hope that's been really helpful. Hope you've enjoyed tonight, and we've still got 23 in, so yeah, quite a lot of us stayed to the end. So brilliant. Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much.
That's all right. I hope that's helped everybody. And
Thank you.
thanks for coming. And you know what I'm going to say? Keep safe, keep well, and keep looking up. Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye, folks.
Next week.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.